Hi, my name is Mario Piombo. I'm Director of Innovation for Napa Learns, and I'm joined today by Jen Ellison, who is a technology specialist at Phillips Elementary Magnet School. Thanks for joining me, Jen.
Great. Thanks for having me here.
So, Jen, in talking to our Napa Learns team and our leadership, we really wanted to be able to provide the opportunity for our donors and other stakeholders to really understand what's happening right now in education as we deal with the COVID-19 epidemic. And we naturally thought of you, having been one of our Napa Learns Fellows, as well as Teacher of the Year for Napa County, and among many other accomplishments. And I just have a couple questions that I want to get your perspective on and really unpack as we think about how teachers are having to pivot and adapt in this new world of learning. So my first question is just a very nuts and bolts question. How has your life shifted as a result of what's happening?
As a result of what's been going on, my life and the life of people around the world has, of course, shifted completely. For one, as a teacher, as an educator, it's really difficult not to be able to be with my students. And having limited access to them is really frustrating and worrisome, especially as we know that for many students, school is a safe harbor for them. And so thinking about those kids and wondering what's going on with them and what their lives are like right now is pretty stressful. So instead of being actively, not just teaching school, but also with my after school clubs, I would get home, around 5, and now I'm here all the time home, trying to reach out to my students and hoping that they can, respond. So things are really different.
Nice. How is this different than other kind of challenging times that you've had to support families and students through?
Well, as a school district, we've had many challenging times. We've had some fires and some smoke days where we weren't able to go to school. But this particular situation is dramatically different in that, it's unprecedented. It's nationwide, worldwide. It's much longer lasting than our smoke days ever were. And just the lack of access to our community, not just, obviously, I don't get to see my students on a daily basis anymore, but I also don't get to see my coworkers. And it's amazing what those tiny minutes that you have with each other, passing each other in the hallway or just eating lunch together in the lunchroom can really encourage and sustain you and tie you together as a community. And we don't have that as much. We've had several meetups on Zoom, both official and unofficial, just so that we can see each other. And I think one of the things that happened too that was really shocking about it was that we didn't really have a lot of warning or time. We were together on a Friday, and by that late afternoon, after we'd all left, we were told we weren't coming back. So I guess it was on a Thursday. So we just had very little time to prepare, emotionally, but also to prepare like physically to make sure that we have all the things that we needed after we had left.
Definitely. What did you do to prepare? It seemed like you probably had about 24 hours realistically to prepare. And what does that look like for you?
So we were given about 24 hours, I think, in total. We had a day that we could return to our classrooms and take what we needed. But of course, it having never happened before, we didn't really think, I don't think I could have fully understood what I needed to bring home with me. For one, at the time when we were leaving, we believed that we were just going to have a 3-week closure, and now it's extended to an even longer time. So, and there was also a sort of emergency feel to it. So I think that sort of heightened the time that you spent collecting whatever you needed. So for me, because I teach technology, most of what I do is online. But even with that, there are some things that I didn't grab that I wish I had. I wish I'd grabbed my green screen. Didn't do that. And some other kinds of equipment. I didn't grab my physical textbooks because, again, they're also available online, but I kind of wish I had, because sometimes it's nice to have a hard copy. And then we locked up our really expensive equipment to make sure that it's in a safe place for the duration. But I honestly don't remember if I rinsed out my coffee cup. So I'm really hoping that I don't have some sort of strange mold experiment happening in my classroom. I know I didn't turn off my coffee pot, because our principal later emailed us and said that he had gone around and turned off, unplugged like coffee pots and things like that I just at the time didn't think about.
Yeah, I think there are probably a lot of teachers in that boat.
I really, really hope I washed out my coffee cup.
Same with mini fridges.
Yes, yeah.
So what are you doing to connect with students during this time?
I'm trying to connect with students in lots of different ways. Our school was a pretty technologically savvy school, in that we were already using things like Google Classroom, Class Dojo. So my students are used to those, but the reality is that not every student has access to Wi-Fi or devices when they're not at school. So that's a little frustrating, but I've been posting messages in my Google Classroom and messages on my Class Dojo account. We were in the middle of reading a chapter book, and so I've read a couple of chapters, recorded myself reading a couple of chapters of that book online so that they can continue reading it. I've attended, I think, 4 Zoom meetings with students. I'm not a homeroom teacher, so the homeroom teachers have been scheduling those meetings and inviting me along, so I get to see some of my students, which is really, really nice. The first Zoom meeting I attended was with a bunch of my 4th graders, and out of a class of 26, I think 10 or 11 were there. And when I saw their little faces, I just about cried, because I just hadn't seen them in so long. And I'm finding that more and more parents are learning how to connect. And so I'm starting to see more views of things that I post than I did like the very first week. So I think there's going to be like a learning curve, especially if your population of students involves maybe economically challenged families, or families just with multiple kids and shared devices, because there's just not enough time, right? You can't do everything. And then also maybe with families with second language learners, the messaging process sometimes takes a little longer. Although, like Class Dojo has a great feature in that I can write in English and the parents can read it in Spanish on their end, but getting to the point where parents know to look for those things. So it just takes a lot of people to make sure that the message gets out to the entire population. And we're fortunate we have a great family resource center that's been calling families and making sure that they get connected.
Awesome. And on that note too, what do you think the biggest need is of families right now?
I think the biggest need is access. Everybody needs access to technology, no matter where they live. And I have sometimes when I am talking to other educators who have different perspectives, I don't think that people realize that there are some people who don't have consistent access to Wi-Fi. It's just not something in their budget, or for whatever reason, they don't have access to it. So I think that if we could just blanket the world, our community, with Wi-Fi so that every kid has the same chance, I think that an incident like this, it just really highlights the digital divide that exists. My own children, I can put them online. They each have their own Chromebook. They can do their lessons. They know how to use it. If they don't know how to do something, I'm a technology teacher, so I'm really comfortable with sharing that with them, but not everybody has that. I mean, a kid might have a device, but maybe they don't know how to use it, and maybe their grown-up doesn't know how to use it, but they just got it for them because they know that's something that they need to have. So I think number one, making sure that the whole town has Wi-Fi. and then making sure that everybody has a device that can connect to that Wi-Fi would transform our community. I have this philosophy that like we should treat every single kid in town like they're our kid, because once we do that, then our community will be just transformed into a place where everyone has a voice and everyone can flourish and grow because we treat them all like they're ours. And I just think that that's a really important concept. And especially at a time like this, like what would you want for your kid?
Mm-hmm.
Let's do that for all kids.
It's a really powerful concept. Thanks for sharing that perspective. I really like that. What's your message to parents?
I think for parents right now, I think it's the message that I would send to parents right now. I think that it's really important to think about the overall health of everyone, not just students' ability to keep up academically, but to just make sure that students are feeling safe and comfortable, like people before schoolwork, and then to really just focus on the fundamentals. Kids need to read every day. Kids need to think about math every day. I think those are really important things. If you're in a mentally healthy place, if you're experiencing a lot of anxiety or stress or infighting that happens with homework, then I think maybe there's a moment to take a step back and get that sorted out and then focus on academics. Because just like in the classroom, if my students are under emotional stress, they're not going to be able to take in information and learn anything. That's also true at home. For real learning to take place, there has to be there just has to be a place where kids can receive information.
How can organizations like Napa Learns that are supporting the community get involved in supporting education?
Organizations like Napa Learns that are really interested in supporting our families and our communities. I think just looking for ways to improve the overall connectivity of our community, looking for ways to improve the logistics of Wi-Fi technology is a good place to look at, but also just looking for ways to support individual families. If there are organizations that are providing instructions for parents so that they can help support their learners at home, all the sorts of things that we would normally do during a school year. Like we have parent university classes for our parents so that they can learn how to do all kinds of things, like, you know, from open a bank account to thinking about colleges for their students. All those sorts of things will strengthen the support system that our students have. So I think those are all just really important things. And during this time, I know that there's a lot of organizations that are stepping in. And I personally am super appreciative of that. Anything that makes learning more accessible for my students, I'm just endlessly grateful for.
That's awesome. And then the final question is, what can organizations like Napa Learns do to support teachers right now?
Organizations like Napa Learns can support teachers. Gosh, I feel like in a lot of ways, teachers are getting a lot of support these days as far as encouragement, online encouragement in public arenas. But I think for me personally, in the beginning of the crisis, the fear and anxiety over whether or not it would mean that we might not get paid was a lot of anxiety for me, for a lot of teachers. But just also, I really appreciate how many organizations have been providing us access to things online that normally would have cost money, so that I can provide my students with more experiences. And again, you know, having a really powerful internet system in our communities is more important than ever, because, you know, if my Wi-Fi is weak or drops out because so many people are using it right now, then that impacts 30, 60, 90 students, depending on, you know, what I'm teaching at that time. So those are, I think, really, really important things. I think just I've really appreciated that in general. My experience has been online, that because we're in this sort of learning phase of this transformation, at least temporarily, of education, that a lot of people have been very supportive and recognize that we're learning as we go, and there's not a lot of judgment, which I've really appreciated, because we've never been in a worldwide lockdown before, and although I'm a technology teacher, so I'm really comfortable with technology and a lot of the tools that we're using. It's never been like the main way that we reach out and teach our students before. So it's just going to take some time for us to adjust, and to be in a period of growth with the world around us supporting us is much more helpful than, an air of judgment.
Awesome. Is there anything else you want to say, or maybe one last question could be, how has the Napa Learns Fellows program prepared you to take on this challenge of distance learning?
I am super grateful that I am a Napa Learns Fellows, because without knowing it, the information that I studied just a few years ago and the courses that Napa Learns has shared with us has really prepared me to be a more digitally impactful teacher. I have been exposed to everything that we're currently using now in the program, and so it was easier for me to jump on board than I think some other teachers. And I know that I have contact through our staff with other fellows, and when we had a staff meeting the other day, we were like, no, all you got to do is this, and you just got to click this. And that's 100% because of the support that and the training that we've received through Napa Learns. But more than that, I think participating with Napa Learns has sort of opened a door toward this idea that you can explore and learn and not be so concerned about failure, that's just part of the journey. That, if you attempt something and it doesn't work out, that just means you got to come up with a different iteration of it, and you just got to keep at it, which not only impacts me as an educator trying to prepare lessons, but also sort of impacts me as a learner, and like how I even teach my students to learn, that you just have to be open to the process and make mistakes and change and try again. And I think that's a really, really valuable piece of the Napa Learns experience.
That's awesome. Well, thanks, Jen.
That's it.
Really insightful. Hopefully you're staying safe over there.
What?
Hopefully you're staying safe over there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you stay safe too.